So welcome. My name is Stephen Riddick. For those of you who don't know me, I'm with CSP, and we appreciate you joining us on our webinar today. And is the cloud right for your business? I'm going to give some brief high-level intros here and then turn it over to a fantastic partner of ours to talk about what we're really here to talk about today, and that is moving to the cloud and how that works and plays into your strategies. And also, I mean, specifically how we're seeing that in regard to people moving to work from home and having a more mobile workforce and everything else. But again, first, thank you. We know your time is very valuable, so we appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your time to join us, and we hope we can reciprocate with making this as valuable as possible. I've seen a lot of the people who register and are on here. Well, actually, no, it's about 50-50. So some of you may be CSP clients we work with for a while, just considering the cloud, but we also have some new, some people that I don't necessarily recognize who have joined today. So we'd like to just give a brief CSP introduction. We are a 25-year-old IT services and solutions firm based here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So yes, hate that COVID has sort of interrupted some anniversary celebrations that we had in store, but still very proud of the history and the legacy that we've had. Focus in a lot of different areas, but I'll be very candid. I mean, two of our biggest growth areas continue to be both the cloud, which we're obviously here to talk about today, and IT security. Looking at, I mean, again, the growth numbers from the cloud, I saw just within the past week or so, we already surpassed 2019's cloud numbers, so already targeted for another year of growth for us when it comes to the cloud. And again, that's why we're here today, because we're seeing more and more people finding value by moving their infrastructure, moving their workloads into the cloud environment. From a logistics standpoint, just a couple of housekeeping items. One, everyone is muted upon entry. We have tried some of these in the past. I love conversation. I love keeping it more open, but as I'm sure most of you have been on enough Zooms over the past 6 months now to realize that it unfortunately never fails. Somebody forgets and doesn't respect and interrupts things. So everyone is muted upon entry. However, we would love to answer as many questions as possible. We want to keep it as interactive as possible, so do not hesitate to use the Q&A, use the chat features, reach out to us, and we'd love to be answering those questions for you. And finally, I know I started with the thanks, talking about you taking time out of your day for us. And so, again, we also want to respect your time on the back end, trying to get going here on time. I know the invite actually blocks an hour. We really have found that attention spans aren't that long, so like to even try to keep it at 30 minutes if we can. Hopefully get you out of here, get you on your day. If there are a lot of great questions, we'll keep going. But again, want to respect your time, definitely get you out within the window that we said we would. And I guess the last piece of logistics is, I'm sure, hopefully not the only reason, but we are excited to have our raffle drawing, our raffle giveaway for both the Yeti Cooler and some AirPods. We do want to make sure that people are here who, it's not just based upon people who register, but people who showed up and join. And actually, I need a little Zoom help afterwards to look at the reports. So I'll make sure people, we're really only entering people who are here the whole time. So that will be complete as soon as we're done. I'll send out an email to everybody announcing the winners. So you will get that. You'll know this isn't a nefarious, marketing ploy. There is a Yeti. There are AirPods. So that'll go out as soon as we're done. We're not going to do that live here on the webinar. Okay, so with all that behind us, I am now going to excited to introduce the main event today. And that is, we are here to talk about the cloud, and specifically a fantastic partner of ours, Green Cloud Technologies. And I'm going to let JP introduce JP here in a moment, and he'll do a lot of the talking. But I'd like to start with, I guess, a little bit of background from my perspective. And obviously, the cloud. I mean, it's such a big term, and it's a nebulous. You ask 10 people what the cloud means, and you'll get 10 different answers. But while it's really become a standard discussion point now with almost every client, when we first started looking at this 5 years ago or so, it wasn't. And there are obviously some big players out there, we evaluated all extremely closely. We looked at the AWS, the Amazon Web Services. We looked at Azure. We looked at a few others. And I'd be remiss. I mean, there are certain, every now and then there's a very specific use case, that we get asked about with Azure. And, I think Microsoft's a great company in a lot of ways, but we've really aligned with Green Cloud and absolutely just love this partnership. And, when I look at our vendor stack and I look at the partnership that we have, Green Cloud really is at the top of the list. And I think one thing that I love is something that for those of you who know CSP, hopefully you'll see is one of our core values is personalize it and personalize IT. And so much of technology these days can be automated. But for us, the way we do business, maybe a little old school, but we still think the personal side of doing business is so important. And having a group here, you'll meet JP today, but plenty of other people on the other side who there is a personal relationship. If something happens, we have somebody we can call and get information from. They're in our office. They're training us. They're doing other things. And some of these bigger players, it's just become so automated that if we have a support question, there's nobody to get on the phone. It's going to a chat forum or something online. So we have a great relationship with Green Cloud. They've been a fantastic partner of ours. Excited to have them on today. And with that, JP, I'll turn it over to you and let you take it away.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. And congrats on 25 years. That's great. You and Bill have been doing great things in the team up there. That's for sure. So everybody, thank you for those of you who may know me on the CSP side. I'm JP. My full name is Jonathan Philipsen, but that's a mouthful. So everybody calls me by JP. I'm originally from North Carolina. Just a little bit about me. Went to Appalachian State, graduated, seems like years and years and years ago, but went to school there. And so I've been a Carolinas guy pretty much my entire life, with the exception of living in Atlanta for 3 years. But I've been a part of the Green Cloud team here since 2013. And, I'll kind of give a high level agenda about kind of what we want to cover today. And then we'll get to the meat and potatoes at the end, and hopefully there's some Q&A. So please use the chat, as Stephen mentioned, and then Phil and both Stephen will administer that. And then, like I said, we will talk through those questions there towards the end. So at the very beginning, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about Green Cloud. Where do we fit? To Stephen's point, cloud is a big 5-letter word that has been misrepresented and represented also very clearly over the years. So we're going to establish not only who we are, but what spaces that we, Green Cloud, plays in, and we support CSP and their clients in. And then I'd like to talk about, and when Stephen made reference of all this mobile workforce, remote working from home, I'd like to establish, why do we even want to, enable cloud-based behavior? Why do we want to go there? Then I'd like to talk through, what is it? Not to take a couple steps back, but really identify what is the cloud, and then try to figure out what can we do with it? And more importantly, how do we get there? So those are 3 very big areas that we'll definitely be covering. And then lastly, one of the key things that typically people, maybe they talk through but don't think about it until after they've made the move to go to a cloud, whether that's a software-based application, a platform application, or maybe it's an infrastructure. They don't think about certain things. So I'm going to identify and articulate 4 different, what I call the big unknowns. We like to work with CSP, on the front side. So there are no unknowns and no gotchas once you're physically there. So with that said, just a little bit about us. As I mentioned, Green Cloud Technologies, we were founded in 2011. And it doesn't sound like that's that long ago. It's almost 10 years now. It's hard to think about. But if you really think about cloud-based behavior and cloud consumption, that was really at the very beginning of what this big wave is in terms of mass consumption. Cloud computing, though, I'll be honest, has been around for a long time before that. We just called it different things. And then marketing came out with the cloud, and here it is, right? So we, from a marketing perspective, our name is Green Cloud because we are based out of Greenville, South Carolina. So we are a Carolinas corporation. So we're roughly 4.5 hours from the CSP headquarters. And really where our partnership started with CSP was the fact that we were a Cisco certified cloud provider. And through the Cisco partnerships, that's how we met CSP. And then through some personal relationships, we've grown over the years. So kind of what's underneath the hood, as everybody can see on my slide, we have 6 different geographic redundant data centers here in the United States. We do not transfer data outside of the United States. And the software components and the bits and bytes and how things move underneath the nebulous cloud, or underneath the hood, as I like to call it. We operate on certain software platforms such as Veeam and Zerto, if you may have heard of them. And then everything is run by software by the name of VMware. From a compliance perspective, we do hold that in the most utmost regard. So whether it's SOC compliance that people are concerned about in this day and age, meaning how do we handle the communication, the business processes on the back end to support your data, we're a SOC compliant organization. If you're a HIPAA-based organization, we can help you check those boxes. And then, of course, ISO, we are an ISO certified company as well. So we don't do everything in the off-premise cloud environment. And this is where kind of we hang our hat. And it's interesting because there's a lot of people that think cloud means everything to everybody. And that's definitely not the case. We do 5 very specific things, of which CSP takes advantage of some, if not all of those things for certain clients. But the good thing is on a per client basis, you don't have to consume everything. Meaning we will support your infrastructure as a service needs, or your disaster recovery needs, or maybe it's just offsite backup, or maybe it's security or virtual desktops. So we supply these 5 specific things, but once again, we want to understand the applications in which you're going to be moving to a quote unquote cloud. And we want to do that very well. So we don't want to be generalists at the job. We want you to make sure that you understand that this is all that we do. And there's plenty other things that you could be doing in a cloud, such as unified communications, software as a service. And I'm going to show you a list here further through the presentation about all the other things that you could possibly do. And I'm sure there's plenty more that I didn't put on the slide. But the point is, we do these 5 very big things, and we do them very well. And the point is, we are here to support and supplement the CSP team as their needs not only change, but evolve with the client, because that's the whole point. Through cloud-based behavior, the concept of agility and scale, whether that's up or down, needs to be there. So first off, the first product, infrastructure as a service, that's servers in the cloud, right? So if you had servers in your office and you're running into life of those servers, and you said, you know what, maybe it's time for me to make that next move into a quote unquote cloud for those servers, we could support those in one of those 6 data centers. Disaster recovery services. Maybe you are a client that chooses to keep all your infrastructure, i.e. your servers, on site, but you wanted to come up with a disaster recovery or business continuity plan. So in the event that something happens on site, you could actually fail over and run in a data center while whatever happened there on your physical premise is restored, i.e. natural disasters, electrical outages, internet outages. The list could go on and on. The whole point is we're here to support those needs. And then backup, it's very clear. A lot of folks have backups today. A lot of folks have been doing backups for a long time, but now it is affordable to move those backups and those backup jobs physically off-site. So from a security standpoint, they're outside of your office. From a compliance standpoint, you could potentially align yourself with an off-site data target to not only support you, but also to support the compliance and that, initiatives. And then obviously it's your data. In the event that people need it, you can get it. That's the whole point. And then the desktops is just as the name sounds, desktop as a service is virtual desktops. So a lot of medical institutions, a lot of legal firms are moving, we've seen, to this virtual desktop world, which once again, we support the back end of that. And then security, obviously that's big in this day and age. You can't turn on the news or look at your social media feeds without seeing security breaches, ransomware attacks, the list could go on and on. So we supply a whole host of security products to support our partners. and whatever it is that their clients may need, whether that's just a one-time engagement in terms of a professional services risk assessment or more monthly recurring software designs, or someone that is actually looking at logs and analytics to defend the quote-unquote bad guys in this day and age. So before we get going, and this is where we're going to transition from Green Cloud over to why we're here. And if anybody has read the book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why, it's a great read if you haven't read it. I encourage everybody to, and it's more about, personal leadership, etc. But you can actually translate that to answering why before you do pretty much anything. And that's the whole point here. Why do we want to do things? Obviously, that's the vision. We've got this new vision to move to the cloud, and then the how do we get there? I mean, that's the technical way to do it. And then what? That's the strategy behind it. All of which, these are the type of things that CSP and Green Cloud can help any client with and also understand. Now, here's some very fundamental reasons why people have decided to move to the cloud. And if we can talk in terms of 2020 real quick, I mean, if I could reflect on the past 5 to 6 months, we've all seen this crazy remote, shift, remote work from home or work from anywhere mentality that was really a thought over the years. And now 2020 has proven itself to actually be the catalyst to say, yes, this is a reality and it has to. But here's some other reasons why you may choose cloud-based consumption. Aging hardware. Aging hardware is probably the number one catalyst that Green Cloud sees throughout the United States as far as why people are moving to a quote-unquote cloud. Their hardware is old. It becomes 3, 5, maybe even older than 5 years old, and they have to. They're faced with a crossroads, so they have to do something. And that something typically is, do we buy more hardware? Do we take the applications that could potentially be software as a service, move those to software as a service, and we still have what I call the bones of the business, meaning you have your server infrastructure, your networking infrastructure. So the question becomes, what do we do with that? So aging hardware is key. Business agility and how we are operating in 2020 and beyond is probably taken off more as we get through 2020. People are always constantly looking for merger and acquisition targets. People are always constantly looking for business growth in areas which they probably were not opportunistic before. So agility is key, meaning if you bought your hardware to sustain your business as the business looks like today for the next 5 years, it's really hard to be very agile in this day and age. Also, there's so many applications that you, the end users, are using that the software manufacturers are demanding so many changes and more frequent changes, it is driving this pivotal shift to, not only to subscribe to, but to consume anything as a service, whether that's your email services, your backup services, your servers, the list goes on and on. And then what happens through all of this kind of big cocktail of why, maybe there's a new senior manager within an organization that has a new vision for how you purchase and procure, or infrastructure or just hardware in general. So the point is this: if anybody comes into an organization or exits an organization, and there is a new vision that's created, and that translates to why we're doing it, that generally the cloud, to Stephen's point at the very beginning, becomes more and more a part of the everyday conversation. So, not to be too elementary on everybody, and as I've made mention, cloud, is literally a marketing term that has taken off within the past decade. However, we've been doing this for years. If you've had multiple offices and you've been around for, and to Stephen's point, 25 years, and he's had folks working from everywhere, the cloud is not new. It's just what people are identifying with that is newer, I should say. So it's just off-premise work power, right? I mean, we all know that. But the big question in this day and age is, well, aren't they all the same? And I think Stephen kind of paved the groundwork very well at the very beginning of this. They chose to partner with us, and in certain cases, they actually choose to partner with Microsoft, and maybe there's an AWS case. But the question that we get time in and time out is, aren't all clouds just the same? And the answer is yes. They all do the fundamental key thing that is kind of common for all of us in this industry. It's off-premise computing power. That's the reality. But no, we're not the same from a how do you support people perspective. How do you purchase, your actual infrastructure, and what does your billing look like? So there are some very big broad strokes that I would say separate all of us. But at the end of the day, Green Cloud, where we hang our hat, it's ideal for what I'm going to call the small to mid-market business, almost up to enterprise, that has production-based workloads that are not necessarily not going to change, but they're going to remain static, and they're going to grow kind of in a very predictable manner over the years. So the CSP team, for example, can evaluate the amount of resources that you're consuming and have proactive conversations with you, the end user, to say, you know what, your growth pattern has been X, but it looks like it's going to go to Y down the road. We need to plan for that. So very proactive conversation, a very personalized touch and attention is given to you, the end user, so you can, predictably budget for that, which translates to our billing model. Our billing model is what I call flat rated. So, and I'll talk a little bit about the big three on the right-hand side here in just a second and how their billing models kind of are different, not better or worse, just different than ours. So our billing's flat, meaning we charge on a per unit basis for whatever it is that people consume. So once you consume and ingest those services, you would know from a budgeting standpoint that, hey, I've got 3 servers. This is exactly how much my spend is. And unless my storage grows, my billing should remain predictable. Once again, our support to support CSP is 100% included. So there's no pass-through, quote-unquote, support charges that CSP inherits from us that is, once again, reactionary back to an end user. So once again, more of a friendly touch point, if you will. So talk a little bit about some of the differences between us and I'll call them the big three. The big three have really created credibility for all of the people like Green Cloud Technologies, and I'll call Green Cloud Technologies a very big tier 2 provider. The marketing initiatives alone from AWS, Amazon, or AWS, Google, and then Azure have really helped all of us out. The differences in the billing model and support models are kind of where the rubber hits the road. So from a billing standpoint, you may hear terms such as AWS being elastic. For example, they can scale resources up and scale them down, but they're billing you by the minute or by the hour. And maybe they're billing for how much data you transfer back and forth. Typically an AWS model is going to be perfect for a marketing team or a software development team that actually has an on-demand processing utilization need. So they need access to the production-based workloads, but they also need access just to turn things on for a limited amount of time and turn those down, and they're willing to pay for that. And typically, sometimes those things come at a premium. Other models are referred to as utility-based, or meaning it's just like your light bill. If you turn the lights on, you're paying for it, and the meter's running. So from a support perspective, it works similar as well. So some support's included, some are not. My encouraging words here is, as we're having the conversations on how do we move to a cloud, we need to understand what the support is included. More importantly, what support is not included. And if it's not, how do we get it? And if so, obviously you need to ask the question, how do you bill for that? So earlier in this, I said, we're going to identify why we would want to ultimately do it. We went through some of those things. But now the question becomes, well, what can my business do to capitalize on it? Well, as you can see to the right, there's not a shortage of things that you could do in a cloud. And in actuality, there's probably nothing that you are doing that's presently on site that you could not do in an off-premise as a service model provided by somebody. As I mentioned, we don't do everything. We do 5 very fundamental things. And so we collaborate and cohabitate with a lot of the folks that you see on the right. We have plenty of partners that will sell IBM-based workloads or sell what they call it, UCAS in this day and age, which is hosted PBX. So we actually align ourselves very well with some people that we would deem as a competitor, and others we just cohabitate with to supply the needs. And to the left, you can see what plenty of people are doing. A lot of folks are doing the all-in model, meaning they've completely shifted to everything as a service. So it's all cloud consumption. And then other folks have transitioned, they've stuck their toe in it, and they've chose that hybrid strategy where they may set offsite backups first, and then maybe maybe the software is just, some backups, then it's maybe email, and then what's next. So it's the hybrid model. Disaster recovery, I will say, is probably, and I put it on the fourth line item down, but I would almost move that up the list in this day and age in terms of what we're seeing, because it affords you the ability to continue to run production on site, but then choose to have a disaster recovery site without you investing tons and tons of capital outlay somewhere else. So the point is, you got plenty of things that you can do out there. What you choose and how you choose to do it is up to you. My point is, make sure that you've aligned yourself with CSP, so they can help you make that kind of guided decision, and which leads me to, how do we get there? My encouraging words to everybody is, you need to begin with the end in mind. What is the goal? Is the goal just to get backups off site? And maybe what we're trying to do translates to why we're doing it, meaning backups potentially could have always gone off site, but maybe you gave the backup tape, or maybe it's a USB drive to a controller, and that controller was driving home, and you wanted to do things a little bit more securely. One piece of advice that was given to me over the years, and it's great, is try not to be the smartest person in the room. Work with someone that is obviously invested in the industry, that can help you make those decisions, that can do a couple things. Number one, they can analyze your licensing, how you currently are purchasing licensing. They can analyze your applications and actually give you some good advice in terms of what should go off premise and what should stay on site. And give you a real life example. Years and years ago, this actually goes back to 2012. So prior to my days here at Green Cloud, a friend of mine had a very small business here in Greenville, South Carolina, office of, call it 18 people. I know it was under 20. And they just had a couple servers and couple applications that they ran, but they ran QuickBooks at the local level, and they wanted to get that off site. And QuickBooks is one of those applications that you can actually get it off site, but you need to figure out how you access that. And there are proper ways to access it, and there are improper ways to access it. Well, my buddy, he just sent everything off to the cloud and then tried to access QuickBooks, which led for a very dreadful experience. But he did it on his own. He did not work with a partner or anybody to help him get it there. My point is this: work with CSP that can help navigate the waters for you to analyze everything that's in your office prior to you just making that move, if you will. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about how do we get to the cloud. Before we're going into the last one, I'll talk about the big four last. I did move that to the end. When you move to a cloud, you typically can migrate workloads, whether that's an application or your entire server infrastructure, or you can build new. There's pros and cons to both. When working with the CSP and the migration team over there, they'll help you understand what limitations or options are available in terms of migrations. And what I mean by that is there are certain ways that you can minimize any downtime whatsoever, or there's going to be, from time to time, you may have to understand that they will have to do things during a quote unquote migration window to move the data from your premise over to an off-premise environment. And there's obviously keys that you can identify that are, identified for success. That will do a couple things, but at the end of the day, it'll help the end user go through the best experience necessary. So we need to, number one, we need to think about the network, not only the network there at your office, but the network as it relates to the internet. Understanding how much bandwidth you have going in and out is critical. Obviously, everybody is connected these days, but the amount of bandwidth that you need is obviously has been proven for successful cloud adoption and cloud migrations. Obviously, the health of the existing infrastructure running on premise is critical as well. And I've mentioned it a couple times, but understanding the line of business applications, what you run presently on premise, is equally as important as anything. And then continuous improvement. Once you're in a cloud, there are certain ways that you can properly monitor the environment to make sure that everything's running optimal, correct? So I know CSP, for example, has the ability to remotely monitor and manage a lot of applications, whether they're in green cloud or whether they reside on your premise. And the one thing that we are big fans of is we always are advocates of soliciting constructive criticism. Ask for feedback. What could be good? What could be better? And how do we do it is obviously without your feedback, nobody knows the whole story, so to speak. So here are the big four that I made reference to. You need to not only address, but understand security, pricing, support, and scaling for growth. And what I mean by that, I've hit on a couple of these during the middle, but from a security perspective, everybody just assumes that security is included if you move to a cloud or to a data center. And it's probably a good assumption, but you need to verify that assumption. So for example, if you move 100% of your workloads over to Green Cloud, rest assured we're a SOC certified organization. However, there are tools that you can also bring, whether it's our cloud or another cloud, to secure you from the newer risks that are out there in this day and age, i.e. ransomware, i.e. all the bad things of the dark web, etc. Pricing, billing. We talked a little bit about the different models, you know, the elastic, the metered, or the flat rate. You need to understand that. So you can anticipate what is my invoicing look like. How do we budget how do we budget correctly, if you will? Support, is it included, is it not? And then scaling. This is one thing that everybody, once again, they make an assumption, well, I'm in the cloud, I can just scale. And we all know that if you're an Apple iTunes subscriber or iCloud subscriber, they scale all the time. They just don't tell you until after you need the data. My point is this: understand once you get into it or before you get into it, how do you scale up, or more importantly, can you and will you scale down if you need to? How is that done? Or let's play make-believe that you acquire an organization and that acquired company has a cloud provider today. How do you get their data from there over into your environment? Equally as key. So that's the reverse scale. It's scaling up for you and down for them. So Stephen, I may open it back up for you or Phil. So Q&A, I'm curious. I mean, I'm sure it's right for some businesses. I may have confused others. And, you know, are there questions?
Great. Yeah. Thank you, JP. I think that was awesome. Phil, I think you were monitoring Q&A.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions come through. One of them was, so how quickly can we scale up or down with certain cloud providers? Say, for example, if we needed to add more storage to an existing server, or potentially we were looking to add a new server for a new application that we are implementing for our organization.
Yeah, so it's a big question because it really depends on the provider. Certain providers, if it's a brand new storage edition, it should be relatively quick. Speaking from my experience here at Green Cloud, if you need storage, it's a simple phone call into our support team, or a ticket established, et cetera, or CSP has the ability to obviously do things through our portal. So as that question kind of translates to other providers, I'm sure everybody has different scaling SLAs, I guess is the proper term. But the idea of scaling up should be very easy and scaling down should be very easy. I'd say worst case, if people needed access to whole brand new, let's call it brand new server infrastructure, and it needed a little bit more engineering than just, you know, I need a couple more gigs of storage. I'd say that within a couple hours to a business day is relatively pretty fast in this day and age. Your hyperscalers, your AWSs of the world, where you may just need that data for just a window of time, those guys are designed, they're built be more of an on-demand. Once again, that trying to kind of translates to cost and how you ingest that as well.
Great, thank you. We had one more just come through as well. We'll go ahead and throw this out to the crew. So if we're a nonprofit and we pay particular attention to our expenses, how would Green Cloud compare to like a AWS or Azure when it comes to pricing for a nonprofit?
So good question. So the nonprofits of the world, number one, you all probably get some, and if I say preferential pricing from Microsoft, as it would relate to your office licensing. Maybe it's your 365 if you use that. I don't know. That generally is where the biggest, I guess, gap would be. So you can bring some of those licenses with you if you have certain nonprofit type of licenses. From a consumption of storage, from a compute perspective, all things considered equal, the green clouds of the world and whatever other platform it is, those should be very similar in costs. So just, if you want to follow up with Steven, he knows our price model. He'd be more than happy to price anything out and take a look at that for you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So one of the questions that we had come through a few minutes ago, if we were looking to move our infrastructure to a cloud provider, whether it's Green Cloud, Azure, AWS, whoever, would they be able to work with us due to compliance to build out some sort of geodiverse design, i.e. having my infrastructure not only hosted within one data center, but in another kind of backup or redundant facility as well?
Sure, good question. So if I understand it right, if I wanted to, quote unquote, have production, and I'll call it, so for example, we have 6 data centers, and we have kind of 3 here on the East Coast, and we have 3 more out West. Let's say that we're in an environment not knowing anything about the back end of the question, but let's say that you had a handful of servers and you wanted your production to run in our, let's call it Atlanta data center, and you wanted to mirror that data out West. If that's the question, the short answer is absolutely you could. How we get to that kind of model, that settled state, is entirely, it's kind of like an adventure path, if you will. We can help you figure out where your budget and your risk tolerance comes from. And what I mean by that is if your production workloads were in Atlanta and your replicated job, your geo-redundancy jobs were, say, in Phoenix, Arizona, we could help do that. And by understanding your budget, your risk tolerance for quote-unquote downtime, and more in lines with your uptime initiatives, we could help you figure that strategy out. And then from a compliance perspective, globally, all of the Green Cloud facilities are all covered under the SOC, the ISO. We can help with the HIPAA, regardless of facility that we're in. And not to say too much, but everybody's heard, or a lot of people have heard of GDPR, which is data that's transferred outside of the States, obviously for European countries especially. We keep all of the data in the States, so we don't have to cross over that.
Great, thank you. So the last question that came up is going to be, so if we leverage Green Cloud for infrastructure as a service solution, is our production storage encrypted at rest?
Okay, good. Kind of a compliance question there. So all of our storage is encrypted, 100% of it. When it's sitting on those servers, it's 100% encrypted. Each one of our, once again, kind of to capitalize on each one of those facilities, wherever they are, it's all encrypted at rest. And obviously you have to have the credentials in order to access, the data, the servers, etc.
Great, thank you, JP. So that concludes the questions that I've received so far this morning.
Actually,
if you guys
Phil,
have any other questions,
Phil, this is
go ahead,
Stephen. Actually, I think you missed one. I saw one more come in, actually two, and probably a good segue to start the wrap. But it was asking about a recording of the webinar. So if they wanted to share with coworkers. So yes, we did record. We record all of ours. Normally takes a couple days to get it uploaded, but we link it both from our website. You'll see it on our social media as well, but ultimately on our YouTube channel is where it gets linked to. So you will be able to find it there. Again, it normally takes our marketing team a few days to get these posted. But if you keep your eyes out, this will be available if anyone does want to watch or pass along to any coworkers who may have found it valuable. So hopefully that question does mean that you found some value. JP, I will give a big thank you. I thought that was awesome. You nailed it. Definitely appreciate your time today. So thank you. And I guess I'll wrap.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, good. And with that, I'll wrap with where I started, and that's a big thank you to all of our attendees who joined us today. Again, hope you found the time to be valuable. As I said, if there were a few people who are late coming, we're actually going to do the raffle drawing here once we conclude. There will be an email out this afternoon to those winners, or actually to everyone to announce those winners. And so keep your eyes open for that. But anyways, thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. See you, everybody.